everyone, welcome back to Wild and Free Art. I'm Elora and today I'm going to show you how I'm combining two of my favorite passions together, macrame and bookmaking. I shared this in a couple groups over the weekend and it had such a great response and everyone asked for a tutorial. So today I'm going to start with showing you how to do this nice leaf binding. This is just a quick flip through of the books that I made last week, and just to show you what the inside looks like so that you know what to expect when you're making this book. Before we actually get into the binding part, I am going to show you just a few bits of basic macrame and how to practice making the knots so that those of you who don't know how to do macrame can actually enjoy making it with me. So to begin with, I'm going to show you how to do the knots and the pattern on some large ropes and a macrame board. I highly recommend practicing the pattern before actually starting to do the binding part. So in order to make this leaf pattern, you're going to need to have 8 strings and you're going to need to learn how to do the double hitch knot. And this is what I'm doing now. So you basically use one cord to be your leader cord and then you wrap the other cord underneath in a loop, you pull, and you repeat exactly the same thing. So for each cord, you're going to wrap 2 loops so that it comes out looking like a sort of lark's head knot for anyone who knows what that is. So in order to make this leaf pattern, you're going to divide your 8 strings into 2 groups of 4, and you're going to take the lead string or the filler cord and you're going to loop around it 4 times with 4 double half hitch knots. And then you're going to alternate and take the next cord and repeat until you've done it 4 times. Once you've finished your 4th and final row on the one side, you're going to repeat the same process on the other side, creating 4 rows of double half hitch knots. So again, you're going to make sure your strings are nice and straight. You're going to separate them. You're going to take the innermost cord as your filler cord and you're going to loop over it twice for each knot. Sometimes changing direction is kind of tricky, especially if you're not used to it, and it can take a bit of time to try and get the flow again. So this is why, again, I recommend practicing on some scrap string, yarn, whatever you have, butcher cord at home, just to get the hang of the knots. Once you've done your 4 rows on the other side, you can overlap both ends and take the external string from each one, so the one farthest to the left and farthest to the right, overlap them and do another double half hitch knot to connect them. You might need to do a little bit of pushing to make the shape come the way it's supposed to be. Then if you want to continue practicing, you can continue doing another leaf until you feel that you've got the pattern right. So once you feel that you've managed to practice enough, you can start working on actually binding a book. For this example, I'm just doing a kind of dummy book out of scrap pages. So, you know, you could practice doing something similar when you begin. Or you can practice directly on a book. So what you'll need in order to do this is some embroidery floss. You'll need, or threaded or bookbinding thread. You'll need a crochet hook or large eye needle, and you will need to have your book divided into 8 signatures, because again, you will be using 8 threads for each signature. 8 threads for the leaves, therefore they have to go in each signature. I also suggest waxing your thread if it's not waxed already. In this case, I'm just using a wax melt that I happen to have. I try always to reuse what I have, but if you have proper beeswax, please feel free to use it. So for measuring this, what you're probably going to want to do is to measure 3 times the length of your book times 8 for each signature, plus 1 extra length, just to be on the safe side. Once you've measured out all your thread, go ahead and wax it if it's not already waxed. Obviously, if it's already waxed, you don't need to follow this step. Once you've waxed your thread, separate it into 8 equal lengths, and then you can get ready to start making your binding. So once your threads have all been divided, it's time to begin preparing your book. What you'll need at first is just your cover. And you're going to start by measuring a small distance from the top and the bottom to make sure that your first hole also includes the signatures. I don't recommend starting straight at the top of the book because you're going to need a bit of wiggle room. So in this case of this little book, I just measured about 1 centimeter from the top. However, in the example book that I showed you earlier, it was about 1 inch. So just mark the location on your spine and then punch it through with your awl. Make sure your hole is fairly large because you will be needing to pass all 8 of your threads through the spine from the outside in. This is where a crochet hook comes in handy, but if you don't have a crochet hook, a large eye needle where you can pass more than 1 thread at a time will help you. So just pull your threads through to the other side and leave a tail of about a couple of inches or so on the inside. I find that it helps me to just stick a piece of washi tape on the tail on the inside just for this first leaf to help keep the tension. One of the things when doing macrame is trying to figure out the best tension and the right amount of tightness for your knots. So hopefully when you're practicing, you'll figure it out. In this case, just to begin, I have used my macrame board and a clamp to clamp my book cover down while I make the first leaf. Now, you can also use a book press or tape it down or use a heavy weight. Whatever you have is just fine. So again, now we're going to basically follow the same thing we did at the beginning. We're going to carefully separate our threads into 2 groups of 4. We're going to then take the inside filler cord of one side and begin doing our double half hitch knots 4 times until we have completed the first half of the leaf. Once you've finished the first half, you're going to repeat the pattern on the other side using the inside cord as the filler cord and using the other 3 cords as your half hitch knotting cords. Do it for 4 times, 4 rows again, until you've completed the other half of the leaf. So once you've finished your final row of the leaf, you're going to want to make sure your cords are nice and straight. You're going to want to again overlap the strings, taking apart the external string on the left and the external string on the right, and doing a double half hitch knot while keeping the others separated. You can do this knot in any direction, depends if you're right or left-handed, whichever way, it doesn't really matter. Your leaf will just kind of tilt more in one direction over the other. Now that you've done your double half hitch knot, it's time to get to the slightly more complicated part of the book binding process. So you have to make sure that your leaf is nice and straight along the spine, and then poke a hole through the cords right at the bottom tip of your leaf. Again, make sure it's nice and big because we're going to have to pass the cords all back through to the inside of the cover. Again, using your crochet hook or your large eye needle will definitely make this process a lot easier. Once you've managed to pull all of your cords into the inside, double check that they're all pulled with the same tautness, that you don't have any little loops stuck on the outside, and make sure that all of the ropes are untangled and nice and straight. Remove the washi tape that you had used to hold it in place and get your signatures. Now at this point, you're going to have to do a little bit of measuring and eyeballing. This is very much, let's call it an intuitive binding process that doesn't really use specific measures. So basically, line up your signatures to the 2 holes along your spine and mark both the top hole and the second hole along the edge. And then you're going to want to use your awl to poke the holes in each of your signatures. Once you've done poking the holes through each of your signatures, you're going to want to take either your large eye needle or your normal bookbinding needle, whichever one you use, depending on the string that you're using for your binding. And you're going to want to take one of the strings, pass it through the eye of the needle, and then use that to thread it into one of your signatures. I like to start from the back and work my way to the front. In this case, when I was making the book, I found it was a little bit easier. So you're just going to thread that string in. You can either use a piece of washi tape to keep it still if you want, or just hold it to the side. You're going to take another string. It doesn't really matter that it's the same one because you've knotted everything and making the leaf. So you have to just keep your tension quite consistent every time. So you're going to pass that one through into the second hole as well. Pull it tight, straighten up your signature, and tie a square knot or double knot connecting the 2 strings together. Once you've done this, you're going to repeat the process for all 8 signatures. Once you've done knotting all 8 signatures, it's time for the next step. In order to do this, you're going to have to get a ruler and measure the length of your leaf on the outside. This is going to change depending on the thickness of the cord that you use. In this case, I believe my leaf was about 2 centimeters. So once you've done that, measure the 2 centimeters from the last hole, or the 1 centimeter depending on what it is, poke through in your signature, rethread your needle, and bring your string to the outside, but not all the way through to the cover, so just to the inside cover. And then you're going to repeat this step for every other one of your 8 signatures. Once you've done this with all 8 of your signatures, bring all of your cords together again. Make sure they're nice and clear and unknotted. And then do the same. Measure your 2 centimeters or whatever it is on the outside. Poke it through your spine, and then repeat the process of bringing the cords through to the outside. You can again use your crochet hook, you can use your large eye needle, whichever way works best for you. Once you've brought all of your cords back to the outside, you're going to want to make sure they're nicely untangled and separate them again into 2 groups of 4, just like as if you're going to make another leaf. You'll see that they'll tend to naturally fall closer to each other. So try and follow where they naturally tend to fall. Now, this is the slightly tricky part that took me forever to figure out how to pass this pattern through. So what you're going to want to do is divide your cords into 2 groups of 4. Take your crochet hook or large needle, but in this case a crochet hook really makes life easier. You're going to want to lift them up, pass them through behind your first leaf on one end, and then you're going to repeat the process in the other direction with the other set of 4. Slide your hook under or your needle and pass them through underneath the first leaf. Once they're through, you can begin the whole process of making your next leaf. Now, usually at this point, I've got a whole book full of signatures. I would usually put it between my knees in order to do this, but you could use a box. If you have a book press, that would be great, or a flower press. Or you can just get 2 clamps like I've done here in order to make sure that the book stays up straight. Then you're going to repeat the same process you did for the first leaf. Divide your 2 sides in 4, make sure they're nice and straight, and do 4 rows. So again, once you're done, you can tie it still. But here in this case, I wanted to show you what it would look like if you do 5. Obviously, you can do as many rows as you want on your leaves. The more you do, the different size it is. But if you see that your measurement was just off slightly, you can just easily add 1 extra row on each side and then close off the leaf just like you would before. With the 2 external parts and doing a double half hitch knot there. Once you're done, you're going to then basically repeat the same process that you did before. You're going to pass your threads back through the same hole that you came out of into the inside of your cover, and once they're on the inside of your cover, again you're going to thread each string through the same hole that you came out of before using your needle, whichever kind you want. Here, just to change things up, I used a plastic one. I did this for a couple and then decided that my metal one was much better. I just preferred the way it threaded everything through. But what you're going to do is basically you're going to poke it right back through the same hole that you came out of. You're going to measure your length of your leaf, which is, again, we'll say for the video, 2 centimeters. And you're going to poke a hole through your signature. And then thread your needle out, your string out to the other side. Then you're going to repeat the same process with every single other signature until you've reached the end of the 8. Once you've finished passing the strings through all your signatures, you're going to repeat the process of measuring your distance and poking the hole through the cover and bringing your strings back to the outside. So once everything is back on the outside, you're basically going to repeat the same process as you did above. You're going to sort your book so that it's nice and secure. You're going to split your strings into 2 groups of 4, and then you're going to loop them into the leaf above. Just be mindful because this time you already have other strings under, so you don't want to catch it. So yeah, maybe just be careful that you lift the leaf a little bit above from the other strings before you loop both sides back through. Then, once you've looped them back through, you're going to repeat the process and make the next leaf. The rest of the binding is pretty much the exact same process over and over again. You loop in through the hole from the bottom, pass it through the signatures, measure, poke it back out, and do your leaves all the way until you have the amount of leaves that you want doing. For the purposes of this video, I've only done the 3, just so I can then show you how to finish the binding. So once you've finished your last leaf, you're going to continue the process as if you were about to make another leaf. So you're going to take all your strings, pass them in back through that bottom hole and back into the cover. So once you have your strings back into the cover, you're going to take 1 string at a time, thread it through back into your signature, just like you've done before. And then, instead of going back out, you're going to thread it through the top signature and secure it with a double knot. And then, once you've done your double knot, you can either keep it to decorate the excess string or cut it off. And that is the end of how to do your leaf binding. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope it has explained things more or less. I'd love to hear your comments if you want to write below, and again, if you'd like more, please do like and subscribe, as every little bit helps. Happy crafting!